BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Who are they? Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. But these three corporations and others like them are very pertinent and very interesting organizations in today's day and age. And they play a very specific and very direct impact on everyday life. If you have heard something about them, you've probably heard them referenced in a conspiratorial sense. You've heard people talking about them being affiliated with the Illuminati or controlling the world. But what is it that gives them this idea? What is it that makes people associate these companies, these financial institutions, with this secret society? But who are they really? And why do so many people associate them with the Illuminati, with secret societies, with controlling the world? In this episode, I'm going to go over who they are, what role they play in society today, and why so many people associate them with these secret societies and with controlling the world. There is some very interesting points about these organizations and some more covert operations that they are involved in. So I'll be covering everything from start to finish. Okay, so who are these companies? BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. There are others like these companies such as Fidelity, Brookfield, Charles Schwab. There's many of these companies, and they're referred to as investment management companies. So basically how these organizations operate is they manage enormous sized funds from private citizens and other companies that are invested in these companies. So to give you an example, let's take BlackRock, probably the most famous, the biggest in terms of AUM or assets under management. So the way that BlackRock works is, let's just say you or I come along and we have $20,000 and we want something that yields a higher return than the S&P 500. We maybe don't want to put it into real estate, and we want somewhat of a safety net in our investment, not like we're putting our money into a hedge fund or a riskier private equity firm, but we want higher returns. So we take our $20,000 and we put it into BlackRock. Now, BlackRock has many different funds in different sectors that they manage. So the way this works is we take our $20,000, we put it into BlackRock, and let's just say that we decide we want to put it into the sector of technology and we want to put, let's just say 10,000 into technology and 10,000 into AI. So we give this $20,000 to BlackRock. BlackRock then puts our $10,000 for technology into their technology fund, which is diversified amongst many different companies in the technology sector. And then they take the other $10,000 and they put it into the AI sector, which might be OpenAI or whatever other company. Tech might be like Microsoft or Apple, things like that. So we have our $10,000 and it's invested with BlackRock into each of these funds, two different industries. BlackRock's job is to manage that fund and smartly invest our money into different companies. And the way that they make their money is by taking a percentage of however much our $20,000 grows. Now, just to give you a little idea, for the sector of technology, BlackRock might have $2 to $3 trillion invested into that sector. And if you look at any of the biggest technology companies in the world, so Microsoft, Apple, NVIDIA, I don't know, I think NVIDIA is considered tech, I'm not sure if it's considered an AI company, but if you take any of these companies and you look on like yahoobusiness.com and you look at who it's all public information, but if you look at who the largest shareholders are of all of these corporations, you'll see BlackRock owns 9%, State Street owns 5%, Vanguard owns 7.5%, And this is the case for all of these companies. So they own an enormous piece of the pie for all of the biggest companies in the world that you can think of. So I'm prefacing this video just explaining to you a little bit about how they work and what they do and what their actual function is in society. And then after this, I'll get into some more of the, I'll call it some more of the covert operations, or some more of the skewed intentions that they might have in investing in some of these companies. But that's essentially how they work, just to give you an idea. Now, a lot of these companies' investment, like total worth of investment in their company or money put into their funds, is comprised of just regular everyday people, maybe, you know, some millionaires sprinkled in, but a lot of it is not particularly billionaires or huge corporations, but that is a part of it. And in fact, if you look at, I'll get into this a little bit later on in the video, but if you look at any of these companies, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Brookfield, whatever, and you look at who owns each of these companies, they all own each other. So BlackRock is mostly owned by State Street, it's mostly owned by Vanguard, and also other companies might have, other financial institutions might have put money into these funds themselves. Now, what I just described is referred to as what's called asset management. And these corporations do many other functions. They deal in bonds, they deal in ETFs, they deal in alternative investments, which could be real estate, it could be private equity, it could be hedge funds, it could be a lot of these different other strategies, some higher risk, some lower risk. I don't want to get too far into the weeds with what they do, because a lot of it I don't even understand. They serve many different functions, they have many different services, and they do serve, I want to be very clear, these companies do serve a legit, definitive value to society. And I think that's probably a misconception about these companies, is they're just money movers, but the truth is, in the financial sector, it's true for the guys on Wall Street, it's true for these guys, they do serve a very legitimate role in society, and there is good that comes with these companies for sure. So I hope that paints somewhat of a clear picture, so you're somewhat oriented with where they fit in our economy, what they do, where their money comes from, and everything else. Now, I want to give you an idea of the scale that these companies operate on. BlackRock has about 15 trillion AUM, which again is assets under management. So what this means is everything that they own, all the money invested into their company that they manage, that's referred to as assets. So the total amount of money for all their funds that BlackRock has invested in other companies, and their total assets that they manage, is about $15 trillion. Vanguard is about 10 trillion, and State Street is, I think, just over 5 trillion. Now I'm going to read something off of my computer just to give you a little better idea of just what percentage of some of the biggest companies BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street own, just so you have a little concept of how serious they are. Keep in mind, all of these companies are all worth trillions of dollars. So if I mention Microsoft, Apple, whatever, these are $2-3 trillion companies. Okay. So BlackRock owns 7.7% of Apple, which in and of itself is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. BlackRock owns 6.3% of Google, 8% of Nvidia, 7.1% of Meta, and 7.3% of Microsoft. All of those, all are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Okay. Vanguard owns 9.5% of Apple. And by the way, these companies are all collecting dividends. So if they own X percentage, whatever the total amount in dividends that's paid out annually to their shareholders, which not every shareholder of these companies gets dividends quarterly, but just to give you an idea, Vanguard collects quarterly 9.5% of all dividends paid out every 3 months, which is, I don't know, probably tens of billions of dollars. Okay, so Vanguard owns 9.5% of Apple, 8.3% of Google, 9.3% of NVIDIA, 7.7% of Meta, and 8.9% of Microsoft. State Street, the smaller of the three, owns about 4% of Apple, about 3.4% of Google, 4% of NVIDIA, 3.6% of Meta, and 5.1% of Microsoft. So you might hear all of this and be thinking, okay, that's cool. So they manage a ton of money and they make a ton of money and they have a lot of financial control, but what's conspiratorial about that? What is there to, what's mysterious about that? It seems like a very straightforward business model, which it is. And the first answer to that question is all of these companies own between 5 to 13, 14% of all of the biggest publicly traded companies in the world. All of them. Every single one that you look at. And this equates to, as I just mentioned, trillions and trillions of dollars. But this isn't the amount of money that they have, so to speak. It's just the amount of money that they manage, that they control. Like if you have a friend at school and you're really good at sport betting and you have 10 of your friends all give you $100 to go out and bet on an NFL game or something, that $1,000 isn't yours. You're just managing their investment and deciding where to invest it. Now, as I mentioned briefly before, they all own each other. It's like an Ozarks incestuous breeding ground of craziness. So I'll read for you what percentage of who owns who. All right. So BlackRock, not 9% of BlackRock is owned by Vanguard. 6.5% of BlackRock is owned by BlackRock itself, and 4% is owned by State Street. For Vanguard, 7% of BlackRock, 6% of a company called Wellington, 5.4% of Vanguard is owned by Vanguard itself, and 5% of Vanguard is owned by another investment management firm called Cove Street Capital. State Street is owned 13.1% by Vanguard, 8.8% by BlackRock, 5% by State Street itself, and 5% by a company called FMR. Fidelity is owned 13.5% by BlackRock, 10% by Vanguard, Windacre, 7.3% of Fidelity, and State Street owns 3.5% of Fidelity. Charles Schwab, Vanguard owns 8.6%, BlackRock owns 7.7%, State Street owns 4.1%. So I hope I communicated that in an easy to understand way. I just kind of started throwing out a bunch of percentages. But all of these companies, these are probably the 5 biggest investment management firms, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab, they all own each other. Which is a little weird. If you look at, they do the exact same thing and they're invested into each other. So if you look at, for example, Vanguard owns 9% of BlackRock. So you look at Vanguard and you go, you're invested in all of the same companies that BlackRock does. Why would you also invest into BlackRock? Maybe there are some economists that'll listen to this. Maybe there are some financial experts that'll have a good, a well-articulated, well-thought-out answer for that. If you do, I would love you to please put it in the comments, because anything that I'm familiar with, I can't think of a legit reason for these companies all to be investing in each other. Now, to the economist who is intensely typing away in the comments section right now, I'd like you to also include an answer to this portion, because this is very interesting. Board members of BlackRock and the rest, Vanguard, State Street, and so on, are also board members and or executives on other investment management firms. I've got some examples of this. So this guy, Gregory Fleming, he's the director at BlackRock. So BlackRock has different directors over different sectors, and it's a pretty high-level executive at BlackRock. So this guy, Gregory Fleming, is a director. He's also the CEO of Rockefeller Capital Management. We've got Adebayo Ogunlesi, who's a director at BlackRock, and he is also the founder and CEO of Global Infrastructure Partners. William Ford, who's a director at BlackRock, he is the CEO of General Atlantic. So why do I mention this? Why is this important? Well, these board members that are involved in other companies that do the exact same thing work in a coordinated effort. Many of these companies are often always on the same page, investing in the same companies, shorting the same stocks, operating in a similar fashion. And it's because these guys all kind of work not just together, but the same people are involved in different companies. Now, something important to understand here is how these companies began, what their initial intention was, and why they were started. And it started off as a very transparent, very straightforward business model of, we have particular financial expertise, and there are many people out in the world that have X amount of money that they don't need to use immediately, and they would rather see that money grow exponentially so that when they retire, they have a big pile of cash. So they give us this money, we invest it, we make them a whole bunch of money, we take a percentage of everything that we've grossed for them, and when they're ready, they can take their money out of the fund. Maybe they, get some kind of monthly payout, or however it is that they decide to work it. And that was a very straightforward operating system for a while. And now these companies were making lots of money, for sure. I mean, they're making billions and billions and billions of dollars, and that's great. But when you get to a certain point, money becomes much less the objective, and power and control becomes more of an interest. Money, once you exceed a certain level, once you personally exceed whatever it is, $1 billion, once you're running a $10 billion, $100 billion company, life for you personally kind of stays the same. This is why so many wealthy people wind up getting into the political world, wind up investing in politicians. It isn't necessarily just to make money, whereas that is often the underlying motive for lobbyists and funding politicians. Money often has to do with it. In this instance, power, control, and influence becomes much more of a focused interest. And what these guys understood is, wait a second, we're making a whole bunch of money. Money's not a problem anymore. I mean, we're taking X percentage off of the trillions of dollars that we're managing. We're making lots of money. But they saw a very unique opportunity in that an additional benefit of managing this amount of money is when we buy up percentages of these companies, we do, in a way, get managing control of that company. If BlackRock owns 9% of Apple or whatever it is, they are the majority shareholder. But when you amalgamate the equity that BlackRock owns with the equity that State Street and Vanguard and the others own, these band of similar corporations might cumulatively own like 35, 40, 45, 50, 60% of all of the biggest companies in the world. And again, this is my opinion. I'm not stating this as anybody was recorded on camera saying this or that there's any definitive proof for it, but looking at all the data that we do have at our disposal, it is my opinion that these guys understood, that run these companies, understood the amount of power that comes with controlling, managing control of all of the biggest companies in the world. That ability far exceeds any amount of money that we personally could make off of any transaction. And you see that manifested in the last maybe 10, 15, 18 or so years. You see this reflected in the advertising, the marketing, the internal company policies of all of these companies. So you see a company, and regardless of what your political opinion is, you see a company like Disney or Nike or ESPN, you see all these companies band together, and all around like 2012 to 2020 maybe, all of the companies essentially that are publicly traded, that are owned by these guys, decided at the same time that forget about like our primary focus being advertising in Nike's case. How great are these shoes that we make? How great is the polyester in the sportswear shirt and the undershirt that we wear? That was no longer the point of their marketing and advertising campaigns. The point became, how can we show that we are sickened by how the trans community is treated, that Black Lives Matter, that we hate the right, we hate Trump, we are super pro-legal immigrants, nobody's illegal. All of these political stances that these companies suddenly started taking, and social stances that these companies started taking, I'm sorry to break it to you, it is not because, some rich CEO of a sportswear company just woke up one day and decided that he loves trans people and he loves homosexuals, and he's just sickened about how terribly these people are being treated in America. That is not why these companies suddenly started doing this. In fact, I'm not going to get into examples, but many of the people that started Nike, that started Disney, that started these corporations, many of them that are the actual founders and CEOs are very staunchly right-wing people, for the most part. And they get their couple $1 billion, they get their hundreds of millions of dollars they get for selling off to private equity company, these investment management companies. And these companies institute these policies. And in situations like this, it's very important to follow the breadcrumb trail. And you sit back and you go, okay, I see what he's talking about. That kind of makes sense in a certain way. These companies buy up equity in all these companies, and suddenly, kind of out of nowhere, they all start pushing trans agendas and super woke ideologies. That seems very random. Like, okay, whatever. And then you follow the breadcrumb trail and you go, why are they doing that? It's not improving the sales, right? The company is an organization, a profit-driven organization. You've seen time after time after time after time, companies try to push these agendas on to the American people, and it completely fizzles out. All of them. These are all publicly traded companies. You can, I mean, probably the most famous is Budweiser, Bud Light, whatever company that was. Dylan Mulvaney. I'm not even familiar with it, but they took some big trans stance, and then their revenue the next quarter fell off of a cliff. So you look at that happening and you go, what intention would they have to be doing this? And as far as I'm concerned, again, completely my opinion, but throughout all of human history, one thing we've seen consistent is the aristocracy, the people at the top, the people that are in the government, the people that run these big companies, understand that the best way to get people to do what they want is to create a distraction and to get people fighting at each other. It's exactly what the Romans did with the Colosseum. It's exactly what every other civilization, this has remained a staple in humanity. The best way to control a population is by getting them to fight each other and hate each other. And again, it is my opinion that these companies understand the best way that we can get the American government in the palm of our hand and we can have real influence over the American people, over any Western nation, is by creating this divisiveness. Because if we create this divisiveness, I'll work you through it. BlackRock, all these guys, okay, they band together, they decide, we're going to roll out this new marketing campaign supporting African American queer transvestites. That's going to be our new front cover story. Anybody with half a brain cell looks at that and is like, what? Doesn't make any fucking sense. That's completely ridiculous. That has nothing to do with the sportswear that you're producing. Okay. They understand that a contingent of the population is going to go into agreement with that. And when they can get a contingent of any population to agree with them and stand by them and go, you are completely right, I am just disgusted with how these people are being treated, go gay people, go trans people, you know, and they create that. They know that then the people on the right are going to look and go, you guys are sick, you're trying to like pervert my children, you guys, and then the people on the left go, you're just a bigot, you're just a racist. And thus you see society dividing. It's been consistent all throughout human history. The more confusion that they can create between race, sexuality, religion, politics, the more divisiveness that they can manufacture, the easier we are to control. If we were a united nation, if you took a group of strictly Muslim people, strictly Jewish people, strictly Christian people, if you took a group of strictly gay or straight people, if you took a group of people that had some camaraderie together, and then you tried to gaslight them and manipulate them and trick them into believing craziness and abiding with crazy rules, and you tried to institute some crazy authoritarian dictator-like, government regime, they would not stand for it. They have enough certainty and enough courage, individually and collectively as a group, to be able to stand up and fight. But if you take, a Lutheran, you take a transsexual atheist, you take a Muslim who wants to kill both of them, you take a rabbi, and you take those four demographics, and now you're talking about 10,000 people all fitting into one of those few groups. They're going to be all going like this, and they're just super easy to control. So do I think that these companies are the Illuminati? Do I think that there's like some secret society where these guys are all meeting together in the woods in black hoods and eating baby fetuses and doing crazy things? I think it's unlikely. I wouldn't bet my life that they're not, but I think it's unlikely. But is there apparently a coordinated effort by these people to create confusion amongst the Western world so as to more easily control and institute authoritarianism and socialism and put invisible handcuffs and constraint around the population? I think that is not only very likely, I'm very sure that's what's going on. I mean, if you look back to ancient Rome, all of this is very well documented. The emperors created the Colosseum. They created temporary entertainment for all the people to go to and look at and keep them distracted while they're living in squalor and filth, while you're enslaving another group of people. You look at North Korea today. The government is the only information that the citizens, the non-government personnel of North Korea, the only information they're receiving is propaganda and false craziness about the Western world. And they are living in a literal bubble, thinking that we're all the crazy nut jobs and the North Korean government is the good ones that's trying to protect them. That's what they're taught. And it's completely gaslighting and completely not true, obviously. Or you look at ISIS or Al-Qaeda, any of these Islamic extremist groups, and they are taught that Americans and Westerners are the evil ones. They're not, anybody who does not pray to Allah does not deserve to live on this earth. And if they can kill all of us, then they get to go up to heaven and they get 72 virgins and they get to live off in paradise if they kill people that don't have the same religious beliefs as they do. What's going on in America is just a more concealed, covert version of that. You have a group of people who are pushing narratives and manufacturing insanity into the world, making people think. They'll throw out this bait about transsexual people, yada, 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 whatever, about how oppressed black people are and cops want to kill black people. And they know that when they say that and people disagree, that disagreement is going to be so charged up. There's going to be so much emotion behind it. And the emotion doesn't stem from what's actually going on here in the physical world. That's not where the emotion comes from. The emotion comes from previous injustices and past experiences and perceptions about other people, and all of it's being conjured up or restimulated by the media, by politicians, by now corporate America, by certain celebrities. And there's a picture being painted in America, in the UK, in much of the Western world, in Canada, that we're this divided group of people that hates each other. And it's all manufactured. As a closing note on this topic, I really want to implore everyone that listened to this to not listen to what I have to say, to what somebody on some news station has to say, to what your favorite actor, your favorite athlete, or your favorite clothing brand, or not even what your own government says. Observe things for yourself and don't decide something is true unless you yourself believe or know it to be true internally. Come away with your own verdicts. I would be willing to bet probably 98% of people that listen to this for the most part, agree with what I'm saying. Agree with my takeaway. Agree that, yeah, of course you don't want your 5-year-old kid, indoctrinated into transsexuality, and about 98%, 97% of people do not subscribe to that kind of thinking and know it's disgusting and know it's harmful and know that it's aberrative and perverted. This is a little bit of a deviation from my original point, but I feel it necessary to bring up as well. I know that some people might listen to this and think of this as being, conspiratorial or anything insinuating that your government or big companies don't have the best interest, don't have America's best interest at heart. And they might think of that, that's just conspiratorial, that's just crazy tinfoil hat thinking. I would argue that indicating that our politicians and the people who run our biggest businesses and the people who are at the top of society, I would argue that thinking that they are always doing the right thing and always have America's best interest at heart and are always putting through policy and legislation and promoting messages with the pure, genuine intention of wanting to make people's lives better, I would argue that is the real conspiracy theory. Because throughout all of human history, we've seen the opposite of that to be true. We've seen it in every single civilization. People at the top get perverted in some weird way. They might start off wanting to help people. That might be true. But in every single instance of past civilizations, aberration runs rampant, perversion runs rampant, and the intention has not been, with any civilization that we've had, the intention has not been, how can we make our population's life better? So I would argue in this day and age, the real conspiracy theory is to believe that despite everything else, right here, right now, times have changed. The only reason people believe it has is because these messages and these agendas are pushed through a corporate guise, through people who say that we're a clothing brand, we're a children's entertainment company, we're this, we're that, whatever. And because there's that corporate professionalism, you think, well, they're not pushing this agenda, they're not, because you think, well, only somebody wearing a crown with slaves beneath his feet would be that evil or would want to create that effect on society. And I think if people observe what's there, and I think that if people look at what is tangibly right in front of them, and they stop listening to the crazy back and forth that everybody around them is saying and shouting at them, and they just look at what is right in front of them, I think most people will come away with the same verdict and the same opinion. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed looking into this one. This is a topic I like a lot. And I do think that these companies, as I said at the beginning, I do think that these companies serve a legitimate purpose and a legitimate function, and they add actual value to society. I also believe everything else that I said. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, leave a comment telling me and others anything you thought about this content, and I'll see you in the next video.